Top 10 worst places to live in 2023. Before we get into the list, let's talk about a few misconceptions that people have about the worst places to live. I guess the number one is Los Angeles, California, a city that does not have a high murder rate, does not really stand out in any particular category of crime, yet people insist it's a dangerous place to visit. Whether it's in music or YouTubers, people have put out the concept that Los Angeles is this horrendous, dangerous place. But in reality, we visited Los Angeles and it feels like any other large city in the United States. Being a metropolitan area with millions of people, you could assume there's definitely bad neighborhoods, but it would definitely not belong on this list. Having beaches, palm trees, and beautiful neighborhoods, Los Angeles is a large, diverse place that doesn't belong on this list. Detroit, Michigan, with a murder rate over 60 per 100,000 consistently year after year. But there's over 5 million people in this metropolitan area, and while the city limits of Detroit is a very dangerous and bad place to live, when you look at the whole metropolitan area, it has great suburbs, it has some of the best food in the United States, and the area has good parts of it. It's not like the whole Detroit metropolitan area is bad. It's a city that I enjoy going to and I would visit once again. The same cannot be said about some of the cities that you're going to find on this top 10 list. Detroit does have good things going for it. And if you think living in Detroit would be about a bad outcome, wait till you see some of the cities that are going to be on this list. Those are real nightmare cities. Detroit, while having a very high murder rate, it still has a lot of good things to offer. Chicago, Illinois. A lot of people put Chicago to be one of the worst cities in the country, and they say that it has one of the highest murder rates. That is very not true. In fact, there are two states, that's right, entire states that have a higher murder rate than the city of Chicago. Louisiana and Mississippi both have a higher murder rate as an entire state than the city of Chicago. In the state of Alabama, for 1 year, had a murder rate higher than the city of Chicago. That means that for practical purposes, there are about 3 entire states where the murder rate is higher or about the same as the city of Chicago. And I'm not making this stuff up. There's actually a map from the CDC that will elaborate clearly to you what I'm talking about. There's entire states that are more dangerous than Chicago. St. Louis, Missouri. If you go back to that map, you'll notice there's several states that are in the same region, those being Arkansas, Missouri, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, where most of the murders are happening in the United States. And you'll notice that as we get into our list, that the vast majorities of the cities are gonna be in that area of the country with a few exceptions. For the most part, the city of St. Louis has a lot of great food, great culture, and the state of Missouri as a whole is suffering, and St. Louis being one of the largest cities definitely has a lot of problems. With a murder rate of almost 70 people per every 100,000, that is extraordinarily dangerous. And some of surrounding communities also have unacceptably high murder rates. The city of St. Louis and vicinity are struggling. Moving on to number 1, the first and worst city in the United States that you could live is Birmingham, Alabama. In recent years, they had a murder rate of 77 per 100,000. The year before that, 50 out of 100,000. Birmingham, Alabama is one of the most dangerous cities in the country, and despite not being a large city, it has had so much crime and violence that it ranks among the worst places to live in the United States. In 2020, the rate was 70 out of 100,000, the same as St. Louis, making it the most dangerous city in the country. The reason you're not going to find Birmingham on these lists is because by population, it's a smaller city. Nonetheless, it is definitely the worst place you could end up in the United States, and there's no hope for anything getting better in Birmingham, as the state of Alabama really doesn't care about this place. Number 2 is Jackson, Mississippi. In recent years, Jackson, Mississippi has had murder rates as high as 80 out of 100,000. This place is one of the worst cities you could end up in the United States. And while Birmingham, Alabama has a few decent suburbs, there's very few decent options within the Jackson area. The city is still segregated. The people are full of hate. Crime, poverty exists throughout the entire city, and it is one of the most rundown places where utilities are not even guaranteed. The city has had trouble providing basic utilities to the people. This is really a city you don't want to end up in. Murderous, with very few utilities functioning at times. It has definitely been abandoned and a place you don't want to put your family. There's nothing good for you in Jackson, Mississippi. Moving on to number 3, Baltimore, Maryland. Consistently having a murder rate above 40 out of 100,000. It is one of the few cities on the northeast coast of the United States that has this problem. This is mostly a problem you find in the deep south, but Baltimore, despite the fact it's being up there between Washington, New York, and all those big prosperous cities, still has a particular problem it cannot shake: the unrelentless violence between civil unrest and just horrible conditions. This is hands down one of the worst places you could move to. The city of Baltimore is depressing, sad, violent, dangerous, and the people are just living in an unacceptable fashion. If you're moving across the United States, you would do very well by putting yourself as far from Baltimore as possible. This place is just hopeless. Tied at number 4 is Oklahoma City and Tulsa. It's hard to figure out which one of these two cities is in worse condition. You'll find videos from the first 48 being filmed here. The murder rates are high. The lifestyles of the people are depressing. The laws of this state allow things that other states would not allow. And it has just become a place that illustrates clearly that some of the changes that the United States has made in making certain things allowed, it's just a bad decision. If you want to see a miserable and sad place in the United States, or put your family in one of the worst places you can put them, consider moving to the larger cities in Oklahoma, like Tulsa and Oklahoma City. The Route 66 may be a historic route that is glamorized by travelers throughout the entire world. The reality of Oklahoma is sad, depressing, a failure. Moving on to number 5, Memphis, Tennessee. Back to back, one of the most dangerous cities in the country year after year. The most recent murder rate, 27 out of 100,000, and that's actually less than previous years. When you go to Memphis, Tennessee, you're going to see a city in decline where investment has failed to come in and where people have given up on trying. It is definitely one of the most depressing cities you're going to find. And if you think going to see something like Elvis Presley and other memorial sites for that, you're going to find that these neighborhoods are run down, and really it is an embarrassing relic of what a great city used to be. Memphis, Tennessee is in bad shape. While Nashville keeps growing and becoming better, unfortunately this part of Tennessee, the only thing it's relatable to is death, crime, poverty, and misery. Stay out of Memphis. Moving on to number 6, Oakland, California, the only city on the West Coast that made this list. Expensive and dangerous. Ironically, when I look through the comments on my Oakland video, it seems like the people that live here are in complete denial, mentioning places like Philadelphia are way worse, or it used to be worse in the 90s. The people in Oakland, California just can't come to grips with conclusion that they're living in one of the worst cities in the United States. One of the reasons I look at murder rates when I make these lists is because you can't fake murder rates. It's one of those statistics that are very difficult to manipulate. If your city has a high murder rate, especially consistently back to back year after year, you have a problem. And while other categories of crime can be messed with, murder rates are pretty straightforward. Oakland, California has a problem. Moving on to number 7, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Now, the murder rate problem is a statewide problem for Louisiana, and for many years, Louisiana has been the most murderous state in the United States. So this is nothing strange for Louisiana. Baton Rouge just seems to have a bigger problem than other places. Both Baton Rouge and New Orleans have had a problem of being incredibly dangerous. However, New Orleans is improving, and every time we visit New Orleans, it seems safer and cleaner, and things are moving in the right direction. Now, when it comes to Baton Rouge, every time you go there, it's worse. An infrastructure that is failing the city with congestion, some of the highest murder rates in the country, complete lawlessness, and safety is really not guaranteed in this city. If you want to stay safe, you want to stay far away from Baton Rouge. Moving on to number 8, Montgomery, Alabama. The year that I lived in this metropolitan area, the murder rate for Montgomery was 42 out of 100,000. This city is dangerous. The state of Alabama is one of the top 3 most dangerous by murder rates, and it has some of the worst laws in the entire country. And to cater to the views of the people in the states, new laws are being made that are even worse. This place is hostile to outsiders, dangerous, some of the worst schools in the country. There are schools in Montgomery, Alabama that don't even have heating systems or air conditioning. This state is not preparing its youth. Living in poverty, living in bad conditions, and having very little resources given to the people, it's just a normal thing in Montgomery, Alabama. This is definitely not a metropolitan area you want to end up in. Number 9, Jacksonville, Florida. While Jacksonville is in Florida, and Florida is not one of those places highlighted in the CDC list, it's right next to Georgia and South Carolina, which are in the highlighted area. Most of Florida big cities don't have this problem, but Jacksonville is really in Florida technically, but it belongs in the deep south. This city has long been known for its murderous behaviors. It's a dangerous city that you definitely don't want to end up in. Unlike the rest of the cities on this list, people are actually moving to Jacksonville. Despite the fact people are moving here and rents are going up, crime does not diminish. It is the only city in the state of Florida that I feel uncomfortable in working and that I try to avoid at this point, because every time we go here, we encounter some type of problem. If you're one of those people looking at Jacksonville, I would make alternative plans. Number 10 is Louisville, Kentucky. As the United States went into chaos after the year 2020, cities like Jacksonville, Memphis, and Louisville had an uptick in crime, and Louisville took a hit for the worst. Louisville's most recent murder rate is 17 out of 100,000, making it more dangerous than Washington, D.C. and Oakland, California. Louisville city limits were merged with Jefferson County. If Louisville city limits were to go back to the old city limits, when it used to be about 264,000 people, Louisville would actually be higher than Detroit and St. Louis. But they merged the city limits to lower the murder rate. Jacksonville, Florida did the same thing, merging Duval County into the city limits to lower their murder rates. Otherwise, Louisville and Jacksonville would have long ago been on these lists. Even after merging their city limits with the county to lower their murder rates, they can no longer hold back the onslaught of crime in these cities. Those are the top 10 worst places to live in 2023. If you're looking to move across America in the year 2023, I would definitely be very cautious if any of the cities on this list are on your move to places. Other YouTubers are actually putting some of the safest cities in the United States on their do not move to list because of their political agendas, while putting places like Jacksonville that are very dangerous on their next and upcoming places for people to move to, because again, they're catering to some type of agenda. So if you're moving across America, you need to look at crime statistics. If a place has above average crime rate, Trust me, there's no explanation for it. Don't believe these YouTubers that are making these lists based off of their opinions. When you look at murder rates, when you look at crime rates, and the city you want to move to is in those lists, there's a reason they're on that list. I don't really understand why these other YouTube creators are putting these cities that are very good, low crime rates, in their do not move to list, and then throwing places that are dangerous on their to move to list, because at the end of the day, crime statistics are pretty straightforward, and every year we get new crime statistics, and if a city all of a sudden jumps into these categories of very high crime rates, that's a really clear indication that something really bad is going on in this location. And a lot of the places that are growing right now, like Austin and Jacksonville, and a lot of people are moving to these cities following quote unquote tech jobs. These cities are starting to uptick in crime, and when I go to these cities, I don't feel comfortable. It's weird how St. Louis, for example, has one of the highest murder rates in the country, but when I go to St. Louis, I never feel like I'm in danger. Like, most of the crime there is between the locals among themselves. If you stay out of that crap, you're usually good. It has nothing to do with you. But some of these cities that people are moving to are places where random acts of violence, car break-ins. Take San Francisco, for example, where they're saying San Francisco has a lot of car break-ins. I know you've seen the documentaries and the videos about car break-ins in San Francisco. I didn't see a single car with a broken window when I was in San Francisco. However, I was in Austin, Texas, where the people from San Francisco are moving to, and I saw 5 cars with broken windows during one hood drive around video that we uploaded to our channel, which goes to show that there's a lot of really misleading information out there. But if you're considering one of these 10 cities that I put on this list, I travel all across the United States. Your city did not end up on this list by mistake. I didn't miss anything. There isn't something I forgot to look at. No, if your city's on this list, one, it has an extraordinarily high murder rate, which is impossible to get around. There's no way you could justify that. And 2, I travel all across America, and these are places that when I go to, I feel the most uncomfortable. And it's very sad to say, because I like some of these cities a lot. I lived in Louisville, Kentucky. I wouldn't mind moving back to Louisville, Kentucky if things were in the right conditions there. But guess what? Every time I go to Louisville, Kentucky, I see a sad, depressing, and very violent place. I thoroughly explored Jacksonville. I wanted to move there because it's still within Florida, and it has a lot of affordability compared to other cities in Florida. But when I saw Jacksonville and became familiar with it, I was like, not a chance in the world. And now every time I go to Jacksonville, just by chance, we always end up seeing something horrible or something bad happens to us while we're there. I don't understand why people are in denial about the city they live in, and if it sucks, it's almost like they're completely blind to the fact that they're living in one of the worst places in the country. Take Oakland, California. I couldn't believe how blind the people are. It's an expensive city. Their murder rates are high. Their crime rates are the highest in the country in a bunch of categories. How do you live in a place that's completely crime infested and then be surprised and shocked to know that your city, like if it was a surprise to them that they live in a horrible place? But wait, it actually gets way worse than that. Not only are they blind to the situation that their city's in, then it's not their city that has a problem, it's me, the YouTube creator, for mentioning it. So instead of saying, people think our city sucks, what is wrong, what could we do to be better? No, let's attack the messenger. Let's say it's my fault for pointing it out. So now I'm the one at fault for mentioning that your city sucks. No, dude, don't be mad at me for saying your city sucks. Be mad at the people that are out there committing crimes and making your city a bad place. So instead of attacking, or not even attacking, instead of being upset at the people who are really making your city a bad place, You're upset at the people that are recognizing something has to change. So with an attitude like that, how do you think your city's going to change when instead of being mad at the problem, you're mad at the publicity or the people that are putting out a message that there's a problem? With an attitude like that, how do you think your city is going to get better? So the city of Oakland, California, I really don't see hope for a place where instead of recognizing that there's a problem, which it's obvious to the rest of the world, if it's not obvious to you, you're blind. But instead of recognizing that you have a problem, now you're not mad at the situation your city's in. You're not mad at the criminals in your city. You're not trying to figure out what's wrong with my city. You're mad at the YouTuber that made a video saying that it's bad. So I'm the one. You're making us look bad. Oh no, I'm not making your city look bad. Your city was looking bad all by itself. Your city didn't need my help to look bad. It was looking bad way before I got there and way after I left. I just drove through and gave you my opinion. And by the way, if you don't like my opinion about your city, I hope you're listening carefully to what I said about your city, because that's probably what every single person who drives to your city is thinking to themselves when they visit your city. The only difference is that I gave you some feedback so that you could improve. But whatever I say about your city as I'm driving through it, if it hurts your emotions, guess what? That's what just about everybody who drives through your city from out of town is thinking. I'm just giving you the benefit of getting some feedback so you can understand how other people perceive your city. Perhaps you've lived in the same place for 20, 30 years, or maybe even longer. Maybe you've lived your whole entire life in a place that's just like that. So for you, it's normal to live in those conditions. But when somebody like myself, who's been in, let's say, 31 states in the last year, goes to where you live and you're like, oh, this is definitely one of the worst places we've ever been to, maybe you want to pay attention. Maybe you could travel more. Maybe you can expand your horizons a little bit, because somebody who travels as much as I do, I'm not just going to pick on your city and say it sucks for absolutely no reason. If I get a bad vibe from your city, I'm going to mention it on the video. There's probably a reason. The same thing, I'll go to a place and I'll fall in love with it. Like, I just went to San Diego, California, and I loved it. I just went to San Francisco for the first time, and I thought it was a great city. I could not believe how many people from Oakland, California were pointing a finger and saying, well, why don't you go to San Francisco? They really have a lot of problems. No, they don't. They have historic landmarks. They don't have graffiti on every single object that's around. And if they do have graffiti, it's more artistic, not criminal. It's a clean city. I didn't see any litter in San Francisco. How dare you compare Oakland to San Francisco and then assume that the rest of us are going to agree with you? But that's part of the problem with these cities, is that the people that are living there, they're content with those situations. So, hey, this video is not made for you. I know you're in the comment section trying to defend your city, but this video, it's not meant for you. It's meant for the people that are moving, that have standards, so they don't end up in a place like where you live, where people don't have standards. And if you're wondering where we have been for the last 10 minutes of this video, the beautiful city of Philadelphia. Philadelphia is an oddball because, yes, it is known for Kensington and North Philly, some of the roughest neighborhoods in the United States. And as a whole, the city of Philadelphia does have some of the highest murder rates, but it's still a lot of prosperous people, a lot of good businesses. Like, not everything's going bad for everybody in Philly. Unfortunately, a lot of people in Philly have just given up on life. And if you've ever been to the Kensington neighborhood there, it is absolutely one of the most depressing neighborhoods in the entire country. But when you look at movies, culture, food, Philadelphia has a lot to offer. And you can move to a place that has a lot of crime, but if there's a lot of good things, like there's pros and cons. Some places have a lot of cons, but they have a lot of pros as well. But the cities that made my top 10 list, believe me, the cons by far overweigh the pros. I'm sorry if you're in denial and you don't want to accept that your city sucks, but it does. Is there any city in the United States that you think should have made this list? Let me know. As far as I'm concerned, these are the cities that I definitely will not be moving to myself.